Admiral Vextar stood in the command center of the massive warship Eternal Dominion, staring at the holographic display that showed a single human vessel floating in the darkness of space. The alien commander's scaled hands moved across the control panel as he studied the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. One ship, he muttered to himself, his voice carrying a tone of disbelief mixed with amusement. After 3 years of war, this is all they have left. The bridge around him buzzed with activity as officers from 12 different alien species prepared for what they believed would be the final battle of the human war. The Galactic Council had assembled the largest fleet in their history for this moment. 847 warships from across the galaxy, each one representing the military might of civilizations that had conquered countless worlds. Commander. Thokrail approached the Admiral, his insect-like body clicking as he walked. His compound eyes reflected the light from the tactical displays as he examined the data on the human vessel. The ship is called the Last Dawn, Thokrail reported, his mandibles clicking with what passed for laughter among his species. Our scouts confirm it carries approximately 3,000 humans. Intelligence suggests they are low on supplies, ammunition, and most importantly, hope. Vextar nodded slowly, his reptilian features showing no emotion. He had fought humans before in the Outer Rim colonies, and while they had proven to be surprisingly stubborn fighters, they were still just primitives compared to the advanced civilizations of the Galactic Council. Their technology was centuries. Behind their ships were poorly designed, and their tactics were often desperate and chaotic. "Have they responded to our surrender demands?" the Admiral asked. "Negative, sir," replied Communications Officer Zalmoth from across the bridge. "They continue to maintain radio silence. Our analysts believe they may be preparing some kind of desperate final attack." The war had begun 3 years ago, when humanity refused the Council's generous offer to join as a minor member species. Instead of accepting their place in the galactic order, humans had chosen to fight. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into a grinding campaign, as human colonies employed increasingly desperate tactics. Vextar remembered the early battles with distaste. Humans used suicide attacks, civilian ships as weapons, and showed a disturbing willingness to sacrifice entire populations to slow the Council's advance. They fought without honor, without proper military formation, and seemed to take pleasure in breaking every rule of civilized warfare. But now, finally, they were trapped. The last human stronghold was in the Kepler 442 system, with nowhere left to run. Their fleet was gone, their colonies conquered, and only this single ship remained as a symbol of their foolish resistance. "Sir," reported sensor operator Velkarian, "we are detecting some unusual energy readings from the human vessel. Their power systems seem to be running at maximum capacity." Vextar dismissed the information with a wave of his hand. "Probably trying to boost their shields or weapons for one final desperate attack. It changes nothing. Even if their single ship could somehow destroy 10 of ours, we would still have 837 remaining." Around the bridge, alien officers from various species nodded in agreement. The mathematics were simple and brutal. The Council fleet represented the combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations. Each ship was crewed by warriors who had been fighting wars when humans were still learning to make fire. Their weapons could destroy planets, their shields could withstand the fury of stars, and their tactical systems had been refined through thousands of years of conquest. "Begin final approach," Vextar commanded. "All ships maintain standard battle formation. This will be over quickly." The fleet began to move forward in perfect coordination. Hegemony dreadnoughts took position at the center, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. Collective Hive ships formed the outer ring, their organic designs pulsing with bioenergy. Tribunal war cruisers filled the gaps between, their angular forms cutting through space like knives. It was a formation that had conquered 100 worlds. Every ship knew its place, every captain understood their role, and every weapon was calibrated for maximum efficiency. The sight of such overwhelming force would have caused any reasonable species to surrender immediately. "Distance to target?" Vextar asked. "Approaching optimal firing range in 5 minutes," replied the tactical officer. The Admiral allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Soon the human resistance would be nothing but a footnote in galactic history. Their stubborn refusal to accept the natural order would be remembered only as an example of what happened to species that defied the Council's authority. But as he watched the single human ship on his display, something nagged at the back of his mind. 3 years of fighting had taught him that humans rarely did the expected thing. They had a disturbing tendency to turn their greatest weaknesses into unexpected strengths, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory had caught the Council off guard more than once. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the human ship is beginning to move. They're heading directly toward us." Vextar studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human ship was not trying to run or hide. Instead, it was accelerating straight toward the center of the Council formation, as if 3,000 humans thought they could somehow fight their way through 847 alien warships. "Maintain formation," he ordered, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "Prepare all weapons." Captain Kimte walked slowly across the bridge of the last dawn, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet determination. Everyone knew this would be their final battle, but no one spoke about it. They had accepted their fate months ago when the last human colony fell to the alien invasion. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Boram from her position at the sensor controls. Her voice was steady, but Kim could see her hands shaking slightly as she read the displays. "The alien fleet has entered the system. I count 847. "Ships, sir." Kim nodded and walked to his command chair. He had been fighting aliens for 3 years, ever since they first appeared in human space with their demands for surrender. He had watched entire colonies burn, seen good ships destroyed, and said goodbye to too many friends. But he had never stopped believing that humans could find a way to win, even when winning seemed impossible. "Any word from Earth?" he asked quietly. Communications Officer Han Yu-jin shook her head sadly. "Nothing, sir. Earth went silent 2 weeks ago. We have to assume the worst." Kim felt a cold weight settle in his stomach, but he did not let it show on his face. His crew needed him to be strong, especially now. He looked around the bridge at the men and women who had followed him through hell and back. They were tired, hungry, and scared, but they were still here. They were still fighting. "Chief Engineer Lee Sumin to the bridge," Kim spoke into his communicator. A few minutes later, Sumin emerged from the lower levels of the ship. His uniform was dirty and stained with engine grease, and he looked like he had not slept in days, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Captain," Sumin said, barely able to contain his enthusiasm, "the modifications are complete. We did it, sir. We actually did it." For the past month, Sumin and his engineering team had been working on something that should have been impossible. Using salvaged alien technology and human creativity, they had built quantum tunneling drives that could make the ship disappear and reappear somewhere else in space. No human ship had ever had this technology before. "How long can we use it?" Kim asked. Sumin's excitement faded slightly. "Not long, sir. The power requirements are enormous. We can probably make 15 or 20 jumps before the drives burn out completely, and each jump puts incredible stress on the ship's hull. We might not survive more than a few." Kim understood what this meant. The drives would give them a brief advantage, but it would not last long. They would have to make every jump count, and they would probably die in the process. But dying had always been part of the plan. The question was whether they could accomplish something meaningful before the end. "Sir," Han Yu-jin called from her station, "we are receiving surrender demands from the alien flagship. They want us to power down our weapons and prepare to be boarded." Kim almost laughed. After 3 years of war, the aliens still did not understand humans. They thought this was about survival, about living to see another day. They did not realize that some things were more important than staying alive. "Ignore them," Kim ordered. "Navigator Choi Minho, set course for the center of their formation, maximum speed." Minho turned in his chair, his face pale. "Sir, that is a suicide run. We cannot fight 800 ships." "So you are right," Kim agreed. "We cannot fight them the way they expect us to fight. But humans have always been good at doing the unexpected. We are going to show them something they have never seen before. Kim stood up and walked to the center of the bridge, where everyone could see him. His crew stopped their work and turned to listen. These were the people who had stood with him through the darkest days of the war. They deserved to know what he was asking of them. 3 years ago, the aliens came to our worlds and demanded that we surrender, Kim began, his voice carrying clearly across the bridge. They said we were too primitive to govern ourselves. They said we should be grateful to serve them. They could not understand why we chose to fight instead. He paused and looked at each face on the bridge. Today, we are going to show them why. We are going to prove that humans do not give up, even when any reasonable person would surrender. We are going to make them remember us. Navigator Minho straightened in his chair. Orders, sir? Take us straight into the middle of their fleet, Kim commanded. Chief Sumin, prepare the quantum drives. We are going to dance with them in a way they have never seen before. Boram, target their command ships first. If we can cut off their communications, they will not be able to coordinate their attacks. Sir, Yujin said quietly, what do we tell the aliens when they ask why we are doing this? Kim sat back down in his command chair and smiled grimly. Tell them we are human. That should be explanation enough. The last dawn began to accelerate toward the alien fleet, its engines burning brighter than they ever had before. Behind them, they left nothing but empty space and the memory of a species that refused to kneel. The alien fleet spread across space like a giant metal flower, with the biggest ships in the center and smaller ones forming protective rings around them. Admiral Vextar watched from his command ship as 847 vessels moved into perfect battle position. This formation had won countless wars across the galaxy, and today it would crush the last human resistance. Maintain standard. The attack pattern, Vextar ordered his fleet commanders. All heavy cruisers target the human ship when it enters range. This will be over in minutes. Commander Thokrail clicked his mandibles nervously as he studied the approaching human vessel. Something felt wrong about this situation, but he could not explain what bothered him. The last dawn was flying straight toward them without any attempt to dodge or hide. It seemed like the humans wanted to die quickly. Sir, called the sensor. Operator, the human ship is increasing speed. They are heading directly for our center formation. Vextar nodded with satisfaction. Foolish. They think one desperate charge will somehow save them. Prepare all weapons. We will end this cleanly. The human ship grew larger on their screens as it approached the alien fleet. Every alien captain watched and waited for the order to fire. The mathematics were simple. One small human vessel against the combined might of 12 alien civilizations. There could only be one outcome. Then the last dawn vanished. For a moment, every sensor in the alien fleet showed empty space where the human ship had been. Confused voices filled the communication channels as captains tried to understand what had happened. Had the humans destroyed themselves? Had their ship suffered some kind of system failure? The answer came 30 seconds later, when the last dawn materialized inside the alien formation, less than 2 kilometers from Admiral Vextar's flagship. Impossible! Vexitar roared as human weapons fire raked across his ship's shields. No vessel can move that fast. But even as he spoke, the human ship disappeared again, only to reappear behind a group of collective Hive ships. Bright flashes of plasma fire lit up the darkness as the last dawn struck at close range, then vanished once more before the alien ships could return fire. On the human bridge, Captain Kimtae gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered from the stress of quantum jumping. Around him, his crew worked frantically to target the most important alien vessels. Jump complete, reported Chief Engineer Sumin, sweat running down his face. But sir, the drives are already showing damage. We cannot keep this up for long. Target. Their communication ships, Kim ordered. If we can blind them, they cannot coordinate their attacks. Lieutenant Park Boram's fingers flew across her targeting controls. Locked onto alien communication relay. Firing. The last dawn unleashed a concentrated burst of plasma fire that tore through the alien ship's hull like paper. Critical communication. Equipment exploded in showers of sparks, cutting off dozens of alien vessels from their command structure. Jump us again, Kim commanded. Next target. The human ship vanished and reappeared near another group of alien vessels. This time they struck at a tribunal command cruiser, destroying its main bridge and leaving the ship drifting helplessly in space. Before the surrounding aliens could react, the last dawn was gone again. Admiral Vextar watched in growing horror as his perfect formation began to fall apart. Ships that had fought together for decades suddenly found themselves unable to communicate with their neighbors. Without clear orders from their commanders, some vessels began to drift out of position. "All ships maintain formation," he broadcast on emergency frequencies. But his words reached fewer and fewer vessels as more communication relays fell to the ghostly human ship. Commander Thokrail's vessel shook as weapons fire struck its hull. But the attack had not come from the human ship. It had come from a friendly hegemony cruiser whose damaged sensors had identified Thokrail's ship as an enemy target. "Cease fire, we are allies!" Thokrail transmitted desperately, but the other ship's communication equipment had been destroyed in a previous human attack. Unable to receive the message, the hegemony cruiser continued its assault. Similar incidents began happening throughout the alien fleet. Ships with damaged sensor systems started shooting at their own allies. Vessels cut off from the command network began following old orders that no longer made sense. The careful coordination that had made the alien fleet so powerful was breaking. "Down into chaos, sir," called Boram from her station. "Enemy vessels are firing on each other. Their formation is falling apart." Kim allowed himself a small smile. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The aliens were used to fighting predictable battles against enemies who followed the same rules they did. They had no idea how to respond to an opponent who appeared and disappeared at will, striking without warning and vanishing before they could strike back. "Begin broadcasting false identification signals," Kim ordered. "Let us give them even more confusion." Within minutes, every ship in the alien fleet was receiving conflicting information about which vessels were friends and which were enemies. Computer systems designed for organized warfare began making mistakes, marking Allied ships as hostile targets. The result was catastrophic. A fleet that had entered the battle in perfect formation was now scattered across space, with ships firing in all directions. Admiral Vextar realized with growing dread that his overwhelming numerical advantage was becoming meaningless. His ships could not hit an enemy they could not predict, and they were destroying each other in their confusion. Somehow impossibly, 3,000 humans were defeating the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. The alien fleet was falling apart like a machine with broken gears. Ships that had fought together for years now turned their weapons on each other, their computer systems confused by the chaos the humans had created. Admiral Vextar stood on his bridge, watching his perfect formation crumble into disaster. "Status report," he demanded, his scaled hands gripping the command console, so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. "Sir, we have lost contact with over 300 vessels," reported his communications officer, panic clear in the alien's voice. "The human ship has destroyed most of our relay stations. Ships are operating independently now without central command." Vextar felt something he had never experienced in decades of warfare, true fear. Not fear of death, but fear of defeat at the hands of a supposedly inferior enemy. The humans were doing something that should have been impossible. They were winning. Across the battlefield, Commander Thokrail's ship was under attack from 3 different directions. But none of the attackers were human. His own allies were shooting at him because their damaged sensors could not tell friend from enemy. Thokrail tried desperately to contact the other ships, but his communication equipment had been destroyed in an earlier human strike. "Return fire," he ordered his weapons officer. "Target the ship attacking our port side." "Sir, that is a collective Hive ship. They are supposed to be our allies," the weapons officer replied, confusion evident in his clicking voice. "I do not care who they are supposed to be," Thokrail screamed. "They are shooting at us. Defend this ship." The Mandible's Edge opened fire on the collective vessel, adding to the growing chaos that was consuming the alien fleet. What had started as friendly fire incidents was now becoming a full battle between former allies. On the human ship, Lieutenant Park Boram watched her sensors with amazement. "Captain, the alien ships are destroying each other faster than we are. Their own weapons fire is causing more damage than ours." Captain Kim Tae nodded grimly. This was exactly what they had hoped would happen, but seeing it work was almost unbelievable. How many enemy vessels are still combat effective? Hard to say, sir. Many are damaged or drifting. I estimate less than half of their original force is still fighting, and most of those are fighting each other. Chief Engineer Sumin's voice crackled over the communication system from the engine room. Captain, the quantum drives are failing. We have maybe 3 more jumps before they burn out completely. After that, we will be stuck in normal space. Kim understood what this meant. Once they lost the ability to jump around the battlefield, the remaining alien ships would quickly overwhelm them. But they had already accomplished more than anyone thought possible. A single human vessel had broken the largest fleet in galactic history. One more strike, Kim decided. Target their flagship. If we can take out Admiral Vextar, the remaining ships might retreat. The last dawn shimmered and disappeared from its current position, reappearing directly above the alien flagship, Eternal Dominion. At point-blank range, the human ship unleashed everything it had: plasma cannons, missile tubes, and even the ship's emergency mining charges. The alien flagship's shields flared and sparked under the massive assault. Explosions rippled across its hull as critical systems failed, but the Eternal Dominion was built to survive, and it did not die easily. "Damage report," Admiral Vextar shouted as his bridge shook from the impact. "Heavy damage to decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer reported. "Shield generators are offline. Weapon systems are operating at 60% capacity." Vextar looked up at the main screen and saw the human ship floating above them, so close he could see the battle damage on its hull. For a moment, the 2 vessels faced each other in silence, the massive alien flagship and the small human cruiser that had brought an empire to its knees. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "we have firing solution on the human ship. Should we engage?" Vextar hesitated. Part of him wanted to order the attack, to destroy these impossible humans who had humiliated his fleet. But another part of him, the part that had survived decades of warfare, recognized when a battle was truly lost. Around them, the remains of the great alien fleet continued to tear itself apart. Ships burned in the darkness of space, while others fled in random directions, their crews too panicked to maintain formation. What had been the most powerful military force in the galaxy was now scattered wreckage and confused survivors. "Sir?" the weapons officer asked again. "Your orders?" Before Vextar could answer, the human ship began to move away from them. It did not jump this time. Kim Tae was apparently saving his last quantum leap for something important. Instead, the last dawn flew slowly through the chaos of the battlefield, past burning alien ships and floating debris. "They are not attacking," observed the tactical officer with surprise. "Why are they not pressing their advantage?" Vextar realized the truth with a mixture of respect and horror. The humans had never intended to destroy his entire fleet. They had wanted to prove a point that 3,000 humans could defeat. 800 alien ships through tactics, courage, and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. "Signal all remaining vessels," Vextar ordered quietly. "General retreat. This battle is over." The great alien fleet, or what remained of it, began to withdraw from the battlefield. Behind them, a single human ship drifted among the wreckage, victorious against impossible odds. The last dawn floated silently in space, surrounded by the wreckage of the once mighty alien fleet. The human ship's hull was cracked in dozens of places, bleeding precious air into the vacuum of space. Sparks flew from damaged control panels on the bridge, and the lights flickered weakly as the power system struggled to keep working. Captain Kim Tae sat in his command chair, watching the alien ships retreat on his tactical display. Of the 847 vessels that had entered the system with such confidence, fewer than 200 were limping away. The rest were either destroyed or drifting helplessly, their crews dead or dying. "Captain," Chief Engineer Sumin's voice came weakly over the communication system, "the quantum drives are completely burned out. Life support is failing on decks 3 through 7. We have maybe an hour before the main reactor shuts down." Kim nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. They had pushed their ship far beyond its limits, and now they would pay the price. But looking at the retreating alien fleet, he felt no regret. They had done the impossible. 3,000. Humans had defeated the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Lieutenant Park Boram, Kim called to his sensor officer. Are you still able to transmit? Boram worked frantically at her damaged console, trying to boost power to the communication array. Yes, sir, but not for long. The transmitter is barely functional. Good enough, Kim said. He stood up slowly, feeling every injury from the brutal battle. Around him, his crew continued working at their stations despite the hopeless situation. They had accepted their fate, but they were determined to complete their final mission. Open. A channel to the retreating alien fleet, Kim ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. The bridge fell silent as every surviving crew member turned to listen. They knew their captain was about to deliver humanity's final message to the galaxy, and they wanted to witness this moment. This is Captain Kim Tae of the human vessel. Last dawn, Kim began, his voice calm and steady despite the chaos around him. To Admiral Vextar and the retreating forces of the Galactic Council, I want you to remember what happened here today. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vextar stood frozen as the human's words reached his bridge. Part of him wanted to cut off the transmission, but he found himself unable to look away from the screen, showing the dying human ship. You came here with 847 ships, Kim continued. You brought the combined military, might of 12 civilizations. You thought that overwhelming force would be enough to crush the last human resistance? You were wrong. Kim walked slowly around his bridge, looking at each member of his crew. These men and women had followed him through 3 years of hell, fighting battles they could not win, holding ground they could not keep. They had never given up, even when giving up would have been the smart thing to do. We had one ship, Kim said into the transmitter. 3,000 people who refused to surrender. We did not win because we were stronger or smarter or better equipped. We won because you forgot something important about humans. We do not know when to quit. Lieutenant Han Yujin looked up from her communication console, tears in her eyes. Captain, we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. Other species heard our transmission. They are asking about what happened here. Kim smiled sadly. This was what they had really been fighting for, not just to defeat the alien fleet, but to inspire others. If the story of their victory spread throughout the galaxy, it might give hope to other oppressed species. It might start a rebellion that the Galactic Council could not stop. Record this message for wide transmission, Kim ordered Yujin. To all species currently under the rule of the Galactic Council, today, 3,000 humans proved that tyrants can be defeated. We showed that courage and determination can overcome any odds. Do not let our sacrifice be meaningless. Fight for your freedom. The ship shuddered as another system failed. The lights on the bridge dimmed further, and Kim could hear the sound of escaping air growing louder. They did not have much time left. Chief Sumin, Kim called to the engine room. How long until complete power failure? 20 minutes, maybe less, came the reply. Sir, it has been an honor serving with you. Kim felt a weight in his chest, but also a strange sense of peace. He had spent 3 years watching his species lose colony after colony, ship after ship. But today they had won. Not just a battle, but something more important. They had shown the galaxy that humans would never surrender. Final log entry. Kim spoke into the ship's recorder. We came here knowing we would die. But we also knew that sometimes the greatest victory requires the greatest sacrifice. We faced impossible odds and found a way to win. Let the galaxy remember that humans fought to the end, and we made our enemies run. The transmission ended as the last dawn's power systems finally gave out. The ship went dark and silent, drifting among the wreckage of the alien fleet it had destroyed. But across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. Other species heard the story of how one human ship had defeated an empire. Some laughed at the impossible tale. Others began to dream of freedom. Admiral Vextar's report to the Galactic Council was brief. Mission failed. Recommend immediate withdrawal from all human space. These creatures fight like demons, and they make demons of us all. The human resistance was over, but the legend had just begun.